delicious food. How about we start there? And I think that's one of the things probably that needs to change more than anything is just about the words and the lingo and language that we use when we start talking about it. Because I think as soon as you say the word hospital food, it's kind of like dum dum dum.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
It doesn't have a long history of great credibility. Now, obviously things have changed and, people are putting out better and better food. But I think just taking the mindset of like, can we put out amazing food that happens to be served in a hospital is really starting to just change the mindset. One of the things that, Jeffrey's been able to do is to not only change how we talk about it, but also the kind of talent. I mean, even the professionalism to the toke and the whole thing. That's kind of part of changing, what that hospital food starts to look like.
That's exactly right. Chef, let me ask you, from your standpoint, elevating the food and just really getting that stigma off of hospital food like Kevin was talking about. Talk to me how you guys do that on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Actually, we just want to kick the walls down. For years, we had a retail standard and such an amazing elevated standard when we went to retail. But then you would walk through the double doors into the kitchen, and then, of course, we had patient food. But ideally, what we're trying to do is that the same experience is going to happen for all of our guests. The doctor, the retail experience, the patient experience is all the same food. And like Kevin said, it just starts with great food first. It's going to be the same recipes, the same cookbook, the same chefs preparing, ideally, all the food that goes across our entire campus.
And what's cool about that is it just makes it easier, too, for our own teams, right?
Sure.
To not think so hard about it because, they all need a balanced diet. They all want, foods and flavors that are interesting and exciting and not be treated as a patient. They want to be treated as a customer.
Right.
And I think changing that language as well, not as hospital food, thinking about that patient as actually a customer that happens to be a patient.
That's somebody that's coming into a restaurant. If you were running a restaurant, you want that person coming in to be satisfied and get the best food possible.
And to be honest, they have choice. They have choice.
Right.
They don't have to be at that hospital in that space.
That's right.
So, maybe the food program can help them with that choice of choosing, where they come and have their care.
Yeah.
And if you think about, ideally, if you set the tone of a nurse walking into a patient room, the tray is right there, and the nurse sees a barbecue salmon over some collard greens and, cheddar cheese grits, and was like, oh my gosh, I had that the other day in retail. Or when the patient is pulling out their menu, the doctor's in the room rounding, and it's like, you have to try the shrimp roll.
Right.
We had that the other day in the doctor's dining. So it just sets the tone, because I think that's a huge patient satisfier also, is that everyone is engaging in the food on our campus.
Yeah.
I love that.
You mentioned diet earlier, Kevin. So many patients coming in and out of hospitals.
Yeah, sure.
Every patient's got different dietary needs or restrictions or something that we know as food being medicine that they need in order to heal and get better. How do you guys tackle that aspect of it? Because there's just so many different varieties.
Sure.
Yeah, how do you?
I think, the first thing is to stop thinking of diets as the restrictive part, right? It's what you can't have. That's usually kind of what a diet is. But it also is thinking about what people can have. A renal diet's a great example, many times because they can't have potatoes. Many hospitals put rice on every renal diet. Well, just because you can't have potatoes doesn't mean you must eat rice every day either.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunities. And I think on the culinary side, and Chef will tell you a little bit about it, there's just a ton of ways to create flavor without, whether it may be low sodium or low fat through kind of the cooking process. And I think instead of removing all those things from the food, we're trying to figure out what we can put in. And Chef, you may have a couple examples.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of it is just going back to basic culinary principles. Is it how do we properly sear a piece of chicken, or if you're cooking a piece of steak and you're getting that beautiful crust on the outside, but instead of leading with salt, we lead with flavor. So adding citrus and fresh herbs and spices, and like I said, proper cooking methodology. It's like layering a flavor. I always think ingredients are like chapters in stories, and when you put all the ingredients together, you have an amazing novel. And we try to put that into every single dish. And, of course, taste is key. We want to make sure that we taste everything that exits our kitchen. So I think that's the best way to start. Before we ever add that sodium, we're adding flavor.
So when you're having to tackle that and all these different patient needs, and then you're talking about all the different hospitals that we how do you guys maintain, try to keep that consistency with the quality from hospital to hospital? I know that's got to be a big challenge for you, Chef.
Yeah, we have amazing tools, and I think Real Cadence is probably one of the best examples. So we have the ability, instead of secret shopping, we can send out like a homework assignment. So recently, we could ask, could they show us their chicken marsala, or could they show us some of the new LTOs that we've created for patients? So we have the ability in real time to send out an assignment, and then they're sending back actual images of their dishes, and then we can do virtual coaching. Could you tweak this or change this? Right. And our chefs are super engaged, and I think that's one way that we've been able to tackle, having over 1,000 hospitals across the country. But then we've also done culinary expos where we brought a lot of our regional teams, and there might be 50, 60 chefs from a particular region.
Right. Yeah.
And we've gone hands-on into a kitchen, or we're in a shared space, and we're actually cooking and working together and showing them what right looks like. And I think that's been a huge part of our business lately.
Yeah.
And I think that's the secret to that. Is like you can either tell them or you can show them. And I think, yes, people want to be told and taught, but especially on the food side, it's such a visual thing.
Sure, 100%.
You want to taste it, you want to touch it, you want to feel it, you want to fully experience it. And I think that has been, some of the secret to our success is being able to use a virtual manager to be able to do that at scale across the business. 1,000 hospitals. I can guarantee the way we're doing things and be able to kind of guarantee that outcome.
Yeah.
And then on the culinary expos, be able to have the passion and the energy of chefs in the same room. You know what it's like to have 50 chefs in a room, right?
Yeah. A lot of cooks in the kitchen.
That's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Over the last 6 months, we did over 25 culinary expos.
That's
so
cool.
Just think about the impact of having 50 chefs times 25, and then going back into their regions and bringing back the knowledge and then doing their own expos.
Right. The pyramid effect, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fantastic. I know one of the other areas you guys have always kind of focused on too is presentation. Yeah. How important that is to patient satisfaction. And the food obviously is going to taste good, but they want it to look good too.
Sure.
Expand upon that a little bit for me and how much that means.
I mean, patients didn't come to the hospital to eat. Yes, they're going to eat while they're there, but they didn't come there for the food, for sure, right? So they may not even be in the mood. So that's why it's even more important for it to look amazing. They may not even eat it or want to eat a lot of it, but the least we could do is to make it look amazing. So when you have that aha moment or the voila, that, they're impressed. One, that it looks great, it looks fresh, it has a lot to do with the freshness. Two, that it smells amazing. And I think beyond just the food and the presentation, I think it has a lot to do with the full experience. And I think that word may be overused these days with experience, but everything down to the plateware that we're using. What does the china look like? Right. What is the silverware? What kind of tray is it on? Just like a hotel or restaurant would have to rethink every single touch point.
Sure.
We've got to do that beyond the food, because eating the food is the absolute last thing they do.
Right.
After they've used a menu, after they've seen what it looks like, after they've smelled the food, then they eat the food.
Right.
And I think that experience of presentation has just really been important for us.
Yeah, yeah. And to do that on a consistent basis so people know what they're going to get, because obviously most people that are in the hospital are going to be there for more than just one day, you know. So, but knowing that the first time, this was great and it looked great. I can't wait to see my next meal, see the next meal. That has a big impact.
I think you nailed it. We were actually talking earlier about every plate matters.
Right.
But we get 3 chances a day to make it right. And the goal is to actually, because, we've been a lot of us have been the patient. Me personally, I was in a hospital for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so 3 chances a day when you're, in between rounding and the nurses coming in and out of the room, that was 3 experiences I know that I could potentially control. And I had an expectation of what the food was supposed to look like. And when you lift that dome and it's not what you expected, I might not eat again until the next morning. Right. So we want to make sure that we want our guests or, our patients to want to crave that next meal, because it's exciting and it's that huge opportunity. We get 340 million opportunities a year, so we want to make sure that every single plate matters.
Well, I think it's an opportunity to be the bright spot of the day. I mean, there's not a lot, unless you're having a baby, there's not a lot of great things happening in your day, right? At a hospital in general, right? You're scared, you're uncertain, you don't have control. But food is something everybody can relate to. That's what's amazing about it.
Well, and ultimately, too, as we all know, the food is the medicine, is a really good medicine. So if it looks good, it smells good, and it tastes good, like you said, Chef, they're going to be more inclined to eat healthy food, heal faster, be out of the hospital sooner. I mean,
I've often said, food's not nutrition until you eat it.
That's right.
So you can have that on a spreadsheet all you want about how many calories is in something, but it doesn't matter unless it's delicious first.
Yeah. So speaking of just keeping it delicious and all the variables that go into it, Chef, I want to ask you about your the variations on your menus. Like I know we don't just have standard menus. There's always variations depending on the regions of the country where the hospitals might be in the accounts or the demographic in the area. That's got to be a challenge.
But it's fun. It's a great challenge to have because of all the different demographics. And one, of course, we always start with great food first, but we do a lot of research, and it could be in the field. A lot of times it's just traveling into city and hitting the pavement. If we're going through Chicago or New York and we're looking at trends and then we're looking at the different demographics and what's happening, we're on social media, we're following Instagram and Pinterest. And, we're also looking, what is Panera doing or what are our competitors doing? Because we want to make sure that if something is trending, for example, like the citrus poke cake that we served as one of our holiday promotions for our patients for dessert was actually a TikTok trend. So how cool is it to take a social media disruption and then apply it to, our patient dining, or the Mexican street corn salad, which, elote is trending all over the country, but could we deconstruct that and then turn it into a salad? So I think that's one of our biggest opportunities. I think it's fun. I think we have an unlimited supply of amazing dishes that we can create, which, we can do our little twist on modern comfort.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know your customer. I mean, that goes back to kind of the retail mindset that instead of thinking about them as all patients, well, yeah, they are patients, but some are 18 years old, some are 80 years old, some have diet restrictions, and some have none.
Right.
And so just really starting with one, understanding your guest. And I'd also say that understanding what part of the country you're in. We have 1,000 accounts in 40 some odd states. The folks that eat in the Pacific Northwest is very different than what is in the Deep South.
100%.
And we should have our food reflect the communities in which we serve.
Yeah. And that's a huge challenge too, because, it changes, the trends changed and everything else. But I guess what I want to ask is, how do you know you're giving the patients what they want? I mean, is there feedback from the patient? Like, how do you guys, when you go into a hospital, how do you know that you guys are actually taking care of those patients and they're getting what they want? I'm curious to know how you know you're handling that.
You ask them. And I think it really is at the simplest format, no different than what in the chef world, the restaurant world I came up, they called it table touching, Are you going to get out of the kitchen and go see, did all the work that you had done to put up the food on that plate, did it come out as you wanted? Did the customers love it? So one of the things we have chefs do is the round every day to be up on the floors talking to patients. That gives them a better vibe from what's going on. It allows us to see any service recovery if there were any mistakes, or maybe somebody didn't get what they wanted. Maybe they didn't know it had onions on it and it had onions and they wanted that something different. It allows us to kind of do some service recovery and maybe even wow them more than they were expected.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't eat it and the chef says, hey, I see that you didn't eat this today. Are you in the mood for something else? And you say, hey, I just want a grilled cheese, right? Or I just want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Can you make that for me? Whatever it may be. Because when you're sick, we all know you're just looking for something to feel better. And that's an opportunity for us to really make an impact and make a splash.
Yeah, good stuff. Where do you guys see the future? We're wrapping up here. I just want to say, what do you see the future of what you guys do as far as just, preparing this food, presenting this food, keeping ahead of the curve, all that stuff? What do you see the future, Chef?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's game changing. I think what we are doing and what we're about to do is going to revolutionize healthcare food service and give it more of a restaurant feel. Even all the way down to, like Kevin said, the trays are more of a room service model that you would find in a hotel. And I think we're just starting. We just did 12 months of holiday promotions, limited time offers for patients, new regional and seasonal menus. I mean, I think the further we go down, it's just an exciting opportunity, a great endeavor for us. And I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and it's definitely, a journey. I mean, everybody's at a different starting point for where they're willing to run. And I think it's several things. I think one is being obsessed with our customer that happens to be a patient, understanding who they are, what they're looking for. Food is medicine, as you well know, and it's a really important part, but it also doesn't have to be so clinical or technical.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these people are real people that have real experiences outside of the four walls, and they are only there most of the time for a short period.
Right.
And so all of their decisions and reflection points are based in what's happening outside of the hospital, not what's in.
Right.
And we should prepare foods and experiences that are much more like that. One of the things we say a lot of times is like, what would Disney do if they were doing this? Right? That kind of mindset.
That's a great
What would
barometer,
the carts look like that we
Right.
pushed up on the floor? They would not be stainless steel. They would have marketing, and they would have messaging,
Right.
and they would have a feel-good story on them. What would the printed menus look like?
Right.
What would our digital experience look like when we hand a customer a menu that a printed menu is starting to be out of date? What
Right.
if they could just use a QR code,
Right.
and anyone could order any menu from anywhere, and you
Right.
could check it out at the home before you ever came to the hospital, perhaps?
Yeah.
Really trying to obsess around every single touch point. Yes, the food, chef, but it's actually many more pieces.
Yeah.
From the carts to the printed menus to the tray to the china. When we look back, wake up in a year from now, we're going to have made
Yeah.
just a huge step forward on this journey. We're pretty hyped about it, if you can't tell.
Yeah, I can tell you guys both have a lot of passion, and that's why you're good at your jobs. And gentlemen, I've been around the country, traveling with you guys and going to different accounts or whatever, and I can just tell you from my point of view, you're doing a fantastic job. All these accounts they're dialed in with the food they've got to produce. They're dialed in with the presentation and the patient experience when it comes to the food. So hats off to both of you gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today on our podcast.
We love
Good
it.
to see you. Yeah.
Thanks again. And of course, I can't leave this without saying thanks to all the teams behind us that are, making this stuff happen, because this is not, one-man show for sure. There's a lot of great people that are doing a lot of great work out there, and really appreciate that. So thanks for having us.
You got it. And don't go outside and get too hot out there. It's gonna
Don't
be
worry.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.